So the strategy that I'm going to be using for comprehension strategy is going to be think alouds. And currently I am in a pre-K classroom as a teacher's aide, and this is something that we use a lot. And when looking through our textbook and everything, I really realized that this is something that, quite frankly, is very easy to implement. It's very something that strategically a teacher can use to help increase comprehension, retention, and just have students be able to be on the same page and not really have one student felt singled out because they're just not understanding what's going on. And so I think aloud is simply just when the class will come together to read a specific text, typically aloud. Now for primary and elementary grades, this could simply be during a large group time. I know for our class, we tend to do that a lot. And during that time, while we're reading aloud and the kids are kind of reading with us and doing recalls with us, especially if it's a book with repetition or like a Dr. Seuss book, it's very easy to kind of help create and establish things like cause and effect and conflict and resolution. It's really a good way to help students understand separating things like main idea and key details. And so by doing this and reading aloud, it's also allowing the teacher to pause at different parts to make guesses or allow the students to make comments as to what's happening within the story or make predictions about what could be happening in the story. So this strategy honestly has a lot of benefits when using within a narrative text, and that's what I chose to do this on, is on a narrative text within the social studies topic area. I found that it's easier to help students identify major chain of events that could be happening. It's just easier to kind of follow the flow of things. And it really just also helps for teachers to help students have a sense of community knowledge, a community background knowledge. They're kind of all coming together and reading the story at ground zero. And even if certain students may have a little bit more background knowledge than others, really collectively the teachers can bring that and bridge that together during the think aloud. And so the topic that I used with this is about Martin Luther King Jr. Just coming out of Black History Month, I found that this would be something that would be really in the forefront of a lot of people's like teaching and things like that as we're kind of coming out of February and going into March. And there's a lot of different articles, scholarly articles that are used that kind of back the scientificness of just the retention that's needed. Some of the ones that I have listed in my essay are from the University of Northern Iowa, where it just kind of shows how it's easy to apply think alouds within a classroom and how it helps to retain that comprehension. And so ways that I would use this again in primary, when I'm thinking primary, I'm thinking early childhood education to even pre-K, like what I'm currently in my elementary school, because I know a lot of elementary schools don't have pre-K classrooms. And so for that, that's simply just taking the book, reading it aloud, even maybe having an anchor chart up or having our smartboard up, and just as we're reading it, asking very basic questions. And some of those questions can be like the literal questions like, hey, what is this story about? And so for the book that I choose for the primary is My Little Golden Book about Martin Luther King Jr. Very easy read, very easy for children to understand. And so just really for the primary, for the literal question, I just said, what's the title of the book? And that's something that they can repeat back to me. They understand what it is. It's very cut and dry. And so that's kind of with that, with the inferential, I asked, how would you feel after, like, while we're reading this book, and even afterwards, like, how would you feel if you were Martin Luther King? Like, reading this book, going through his life, understanding the struggles that he's gone through, and while going through this read aloud, asking them kind of throughout it, like, how would you feel if this happened to you? How would you feel if people were just being so mean to you simply because your skin color was different? And allowing students to kind of be able to make that thought process of, oh, actually, like, how would I feel about this? And then you're really using the evaluative question of just like, what was the story about? And that can simply just be, it's about Martin Luther King Jr., it's about his life, it's about, there's a whole host of questions that could be happened and be answered with that book. And when it comes to elementary, again, kind of going based off of what the pre-K I'm doing now, but realistically I would really be using an anchor chart. I really would be having asking a lot of questions, asking the kids like to make predictions, and like reading this, looking at the cover of the book, what are some already things that they already know about Martin Luther King Jr., because at this point in elementary they're already going to know some things about it. So getting that previous knowledge, getting that prior knowledge, and having that sense of community knowledge together and writing that down, and then even asking the students, what are some questions we could ask? Like, what are some things that we could be looking for that maybe this book could answer for us? And then as we get into middle school, it kind of, then really just turns into still reading it aloud together, but the text obviously are going to be a little bit more intricate. And really at this point, I would be giving students sticky notes. I'd be giving them highlighters and sitting there and saying, hey, if there's a word in here that's a new word, let's circle or highlight it. Let's use a sticky note. And as you are reading through this, we're reading this together, and if a question pops in your head or something pops out to you, you're like, I didn't know that before, write it on the sticky note. And then at the end of it, we could sit there and go back through it and really kind of see if there's questions that were answered throughout the text, and then see, was there prior knowledge that they thought they knew? Was it accurate? Was it inaccurate? Because sometimes you think you know something, but you actually don't. And so going through this, I think that this is a very good strategy for helping with retention of comprehension. I think it's just a very easy way for teachers to be engaged with their students. I think it's a very easy way to just pull all the text together and really be able to see kind of who's struggling, who's not kind of following along, and then be able to take that information and pulling and doing your small groups or your one-on-one or interventions and remedial work at that point.